Well, hello, writers. Welcome to episode number 262 of How Do You Write? I'm Rachael Herron. I am so glad that you are here with me today as I talk to JL Torres on reading like a writer and what that can do for our work, for our stories, for kind of our brains as writers doing this weird thing that we do. So I know that you're going to enjoy the interview portion of today's episode. What is going on around here? If you watch on the YouTube, you can see, I don't know why this light makes my face bright red, but it is. I'm going for it. Tomato Rachel in the house. I'm in a co-working space in a very small town called Carterton. We are staying in a very small Airbnb, and I needed to get out, and also I needed fast Wi-Fi. So I'm very glad that this place is here and that I get to use it. And I have been using it wisely. I finished the audio editing of the 10th anniversary re-release of A Life in Stitches. And I tell you what, I am going to look into perhaps saving some money to get someone to edit that next time. What I'm talking about when I'm talking about doing this editing is before we left the States, I lined my closet because it was empty. We'd moved everything out of it. And I thought this is a great time and I needed to get it done. Lined my closet with blankets and things to make it a soundproof or sound, what's the word? Buffered, that's not the right word, but you know what I mean. Area to record in. And I recorded it. What you do when you're recording an audiobook is you do not, it's just like writing a first draft and even a second draft. You don't make it perfect as you go. You read as carefully as you can, and then you stumble, and then you stop, and then you keep going. You pick it up where you left off, and you just keep speaking. So there are just a lot of speakos inside the file that you need to get rid of. Some days I could tell that I was a little bit more awake and smarter and brighter, and there would be whole, like maybe 45 seconds that I would go without an error that I needed to redo and cut out the thing that I messed up. And then sometimes it would be phrase by phrase and stitching those pieces together so that you can't tell that there's been a break. It just takes hours and hours and hours. Probably, I think it takes, well, let's say, I think it takes me about an hour per chapter. These were 2,000 word chapters, and there are 25 chapters. So 25 hours, which really isn't that bad, right? You can't do that in a week because you would burn out and exhaust yourself, but you also can't do it the way that I was doing it, which was about one chapter a week. That would have stretched out to a lot of weeks. 25 weeks was something I didn't want to spend on it. So when I made this decision, like 2 weeks ago, to go hard and focus on one project at a time instead of trying to spread myself thin over all the projects, I always come back to this resolution and it works really well. And suddenly 2 weeks later, I'm completely done with the editing, getting the book uploaded. I'm super excited to get it out there. I'm really proud of this 10th anniversary edition. I got to clean up the essays. I got to rearrange them. I got to add essays to kind of fill in what's happened in the last 10 years. And I love the book. So today, in fact, I'm concentrating on doing things like making the vellum proof for the interior of the print book and looking at cover choices. And that kind of stuff is so exciting to me, no lie, that I woke up at 4 o'clock this morning. I don't remember why, but I laid there and thought about making these decisions for the next hour and 15 minutes. I love writing. I love having written, and I really love revising. But there's a big part of me that just loves the business aspect too. And when you give me complete permission to sit down and think hard about the business and the uploading and the formatting and the marketing, I get really, really excited. And I love that I'm in this part of the process right now. So that's super exciting. That is going forward apace. Where are we in New Zealand? Were we here last week? I don't think we were. We are in the Wairarapa. Like I said, near Carterton. We're staying on a farm, a cattle and sheep farm, and we're staying at a place called the Good End of the Shed. And it really is a shed that they have made into a small Airbnb. It's kind of more like a B&B, which I'm not the most fond of because the host is kind of right there, and we kind of like a little bit more autonomy. However, this host brings us fresh milk from the cow and fresh bread and her homemade preserves. And so that kind of thing is divine. Um, One thing I wanted to mention is that if you follow me on social media, I love social media. Please come follow me on all the places. I tend to post a lot of exciting, fun, beautiful pictures of what we are doing, what we are surrounded by. Every week it's a little bit different. Last week I was posting pictures of gorgeous Wellington. Right now it's these incredible green fields that we're surrounded by. Um, and I want to really state clearly, because I have gotten a few comments that that sound like people are saying, "Wow, it must be nice to be able to do that." Oh, yes, it is. It is actually really nice to be able to do this. However, keep just don't ever forget that when you are watching people on social media, they have real lives. And I think that you and I, because you listen to this podcast, we have a special relationship. And I can be very honest with you and tell you that it is also really hard. This move has not been easy, emotionally, physically, mentally. We see amazing things and we're having so much fun. I think one of the most fun things yesterday was driving with Lala on the country roads because she hasn't spent any time driving on the left side of the road. I've been doing all of it. And it was nerve-wracking and a little bit terrifying. I kept thinking she was going to drift off the verge, off the left side of the road. Guess what? She didn't. I was just being a control freak. Um, but also leaving everything we knew behind, getting rid of most of our possessions, selling our house, um, losing 3 animals in a year, and having to leave the other 2 behind. Having no friends in place in situ yet. It's been making me need to really take care of myself. And there was a week last week where I had 2 migraines, and I never really know whether I have the migraines because I'm not doing well, or I'm not doing well because I have the migraines. It's a chicken and egg kind of situation. But there's something that we talk about in 12-step groups, which is pulling a geographic. A lot of people move because they think they'll be a new person, a different person when they get to the place that they land. Uh, of course, that is always a fallacy. It is not true. It doesn't happen. I am in this place and I am still me. And me being me, I still need to do the healthy things that keep my brain healthy and that give me the energy pennies, like Becca Syme always talks about. I have to spend energy pennies on a daily basis. We're spending more energy pennies on a daily basis in a pandemic. I'm spending extra right now because I'm always in a new place every week, dealing with new things, new questions, new issues. And if I am not concentrate on making those energy pennies so that I have them to spend, I end up crashed out and depleted. Um, and it's just something I've been thinking a lot about. So I have been going back to basics and eating well and sleeping as much as I can. And exercising, taking these long walks. Well, one of the really cool things is that when you do long walks when you're traveling, it's always new and incredible and fresh. So that's been really fun and generative. And I need to do yoga and I need to do my meditation and I need to fit all of that stuff in. Otherwise, I just turn into a grumpy person, feeling like I did when I was grumpy in California. The the thing about me and my wife is our happiness set point. They talk about, I think the happiness set point is worth about 40% of your happiness. I think it's just kind of the way you were genetically born. Both of our genetic happiness set points are pretty high. So even on our most worried days when we were talking about moving, we would always come back to the thing, and say, well, we're normally pretty content. We're probably going to be pretty content there. And that is the way we have been feeling. But you may have been hearing it in my voice in the episodes. I'm getting tired. We are here for another week because we didn't want to move around too much. And then we moved to what will hopefully be our last Airbnb for 3 weeks in Wellington. And then hopefully we will get the house we are dreaming of to rent. None of that is a for sure. And I can admit right now that my heart would be broken if we don't get this house. We're so excited about it. So things are stressful, things are hard, and things are still good. And I am still grateful every moment. And I'm so happy that I have my work to cling to. Some of my roughest days recently have been the days I try to take off. Why is my hair sticking straight up like that? Just noticed on the video. Um, for me, taking time off has to be pretty carefully planned so that I don't end up in kind of a downward funk spiral. And allowing myself to do a little work on some of my days off really does help sometimes. So that's something I got to keep an eye on. But when I am working all day on the stuff that I love to do, like thinking about the metadata for this new 10th anniversary re-release, I get it just feels so good. It feels so good to my brain. And yeah, I'm saying this out loud kind of as a reminder to myself and maybe as a reminder to you. If you are not writing, kind of ask yourself about those energy pennies that you need to spend to sit down and start the work. I find I spend the most just to sit down and start the work, the first 5 minutes. Once the first 5 minutes are done, the rest of the day, so much easier. If you don't have the energy pennies to sit down and do the work, how can you make them? What very small change or a couple changes can you make that will give you a little bit more? That has been pivotal to me during this incredible time of the last 5 months of being homeless and upheaval. Yeah, we've only been here for 2 months, but a little bit more than 2 months, but we've been homeless and living out of suitcases for about 5. Oh boy, mama's done. Yeah, I'm done. Hopefully soon we will find a place to rest, and I can't wait for it. Thank you for being with me here as I kind of wander through what's going on in my brain. I always appreciate that you are here and that what I say may spark something in your own mind, or what I talk about with my guests may spark an idea, may give you a little bit of a revelation about how to do your work a little bit more reliably, with more joy. So, with that said, let's jump into the interview with JL, and I wish you very happy writing, my friends. I'll talk to you soon. Well, I could not be more pleased to welcome to the show JL Torres. Hello, JL.
Hi, Rachel, and thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here.
I am thrilled to have you. Let me give you a short introduction here for people who might not know you. JL Torres is the author of The Family Terrorist and Other Stories, the novel The Accidental Native, and the poetry collection Boricua Passport. His short story collection Migrations won the inaugural Tomás Rivera Book Prize and was just released from LARB Libros. Born in Puerto Rico and raised in the South Bronx, he now lives in Plattsburgh, New York, and teaches American literature, U.S. ethnic literatures and creative writing at SUNY Plattsburgh. He holds a Ph.D. from the University of Southern California and an MFA in creative writing from Columbia University. Welcome and congratulations on Migrations.
Oh, thank you so much.
I was lucky enough to be given a copy, and it's beautiful writing. It's incredible writing. So I am so happy to have you on the show to talk about your writing process with our listeners.
Sure.
Maybe you can start out by telling us, how does being born in Puerto Rico inform you as a writer? Because it informs everything about you as a writer, I think.
Right. Well, I mean, if you start from the premise that you write what you know, what I know a lot about is really the experience of being a Puerto Rican, a diasporican, living in the United States. And a lot of my writing really focuses on that experience.
Yeah. What does your writing practice look like today with all of these other things that you're doing with the teaching and how does your writing fit into your life?
All right. So that's a good question. I mean, being an academic, we only have these little spurts, of time that we can actually write. So I've always been able to schedule, my writing projects, during that time. Otherwise, it's very difficult. I mean, I think a lot of people don't realize how busy an academic can be. Mm-hmm. besides the classroom teaching, you also have meetings and you have all these other stuff that you have to do. So I just try to manage that time. Now I'm retiring. So actually I'm going to have
Oh,
a little bit
congratulations.
after 40 years. So now for the first time in my life, I find that I'm actually a full-time writer. So
Oh, so now have you already retired, or are you just like right in the process of doing it?
the process, in September will be the first, first will be the official.
I wonder how things will change for you.
Well, besides more time to travel when
Yeah.
the pandemic madness ends, more time to write. And that means that I have several projects that I've kept, kind of at a distance because it would take more time. With more time, I think I've never had problems when I have the time to write. I've never really experienced a writer's block or anything like that. It's just when I have the time, I'm very productive, but it's very difficult when schedule when you have to navigate, all this stuff, besides teaching and grading. I grade a lot because I teach a lot of writing. And
Yeah.
besides, all that. And then the social life and family life.
Yeah, yeah, the really important things.
You're right.
So I have taught and I teach, but not in a full-time academic way. But I have a problem keeping the energy that I give to the classes, um, holding on to enough energy to do my own work. How have you managed that?
Well, whenever I actually really am writing in writing mode, I don't have any of that. I don't have the classes. I don't have anything because it's summer. So
Yeah,
that I do find energy, and it's I'm a
yeah,
morning writer. I have to get up. I put in maybe try to put in 4 hours until lunch, and if I'm really really going strong, I'll come back and maybe put another 2 hours. But I do not write or try to write in the evenings
yeah,
because I'm just so loopy and groggy. I mean, I don't grade papers then, right? It's
yeah,
unfair to
yeah.
students that I'm like, like, oh, this sounds like a B. No, I can't do that. I have to really be sharp, right? So I said, let me just vegetate for a while. I
Yeah.
can't do any of it, any other stuff.
What is your biggest challenge when it comes to writing then?
Well, I always the time is always a challenge, isn't it, for
Mhm.
all of us? But really, my biggest challenge I find is since I write stories having to do with the Puerto Rican community in all kinds of ways, the hardest thing for me is finding material that I feel I can't exploit or I want to exploit because sometimes it's very easy to fall in those traps, right?
Mm,
There are a lot of tropes in Latinx literature that includes Puerto Rican literature. I
mhm.
don't know how many stuff has been written about gangs and, abusive, fathers and, all this kind of dysfunctional stuff. So the biggest challenge is finding material to write that I feel I can do justice to
Mm,
without also falling into the demands of much of mainstream publishing that is seeking for sensational stuff.
yeah, absolutely. It's easy to do the maybe the cheaper, easier thing
Hmm.
for the blast of it. What does your Puerto Rican community look like in Plattsburgh? What does it look like there? I
You're
don't know
looking
what
at it.
Plattsburgh is like.
You're looking at it.
Oh,
No,
it's you.
that's not really true. I mean, there actually there aren't that many of us. There, and if they are, I know them. Or more, there's more of a Latinx community. I mean, a little
Yeah.
small.
Yeah.
And then of course the students, right? When the students are on session, there's more of a community,
Yeah.
but there aren't too many of us up here, quite frankly.
Yeah. How does that affect your writing?
Well, actually, one of the stories in the collection in World deals with a person that came up here and sort of has cut all roots from his community, and that person is in a very lonely spot,
Hmm.
because they don't really connect, and his wife died, and now he's all alone, and he can't connect with that community, so he has nothing now, right? He's kind of rootless.
Mm.
So, and I sometimes feel that way. I'm 5 hours away from New York City, which is a hub of,
Hmm.
there's a lot of Puerto Ricans in New York City, but I don't have that here. So I feel isolated along with my family. So we from time to time we have to kind of refresh our Puerto Ricanness by going to New York City and
Yeah.
connecting with family there.
What is your biggest joy when it comes to writing?
Well, I love the short story. I really, this is my second collection.
Yeah.
I've written one novel. I want to write another novel. In fact, I'm working on one. But short stories are just, they make me happy to write them and be able to find that click
Yeah.
at the end, that everything seems to be falling in place. When that happens, I'm a very happy person because I feel that the story, I mean, the characters are working, whatever plot I have, whether it's character driven or otherwise, everything's coming together. And I feel like this is done. This is a good story. And, it's very hard to find that with the novel because the novel has so many, as you know, you're a novelist, and there's so many parts of it that trying to get it all together. And of course you have more experience there, so maybe you can give me some advice. Do you ever get that feeling yourself when you have it all clicking?
Oh yeah, but it doesn't click. Well, I don't know. I think the clicks feel different in my head. I think
Mm.
that's I have this hierarchy in my brain, and I don't think it's correct, but I'm going to say it anyway. I think that novels are up here, and then short stories are harder to write, and then poetry is the
Oh,
hardest to write,
yeah,
because you're always distilling. So I think the clicks in
true.
the novel kind of maybe happen more frequently, but aren't as important, perhaps for me.
I agree.
But a click in a short story, oh, you've got it.
You're right. You're right, that for that reason, right? And talking about this distilling, that's like Gwendolyn Brooks said it all, right? Poetry
Yeah,
is basically. So you're right, and that's why I feel that you can get that click. Where a
yeah,
novel seems there's so many parts that maybe this little part clicks, but when the
exactly.
overall, yeah,
Exactly. And you may need to throw that click away tomorrow because it doesn't make any sense anymore. Yeah.
that's true.
So speaking of writing and being on the page, can you share a craft tip with us?
Okay, I think that the master tip for me
Please.
is to, and I might be wrong, but this is for me, is really reading as a writer.
Okay, tell us more about that. How do you do it?
Okay, because when you're reading, and we, all of us have taken probably English classes, and you always read for interpretation. What is the meaning of this? And as a student, I did a doctorate, so it's always like trying to find out how I'm going to interpret this. What is my reading on this, and how I'm going to write that critical academic paper, right? So we've taught to do that, right? Finding meaning, like squeezing
Mhm,
meaning out of it.
mhm.
But when you read as a writer, you come to a passage that's absolutely seemingly flawless to you, or something just triggers you. Go, this is amazing. So you have to stop and go back and read it, in a sort of writerly way, and say, okay, why, how did this particular writer make this happen? And then really find it. And I'll give you a couple of examples. I mean, I remember reading Alice Munro, great
She's
storyteller,
the
great
best, the best,
master.
best. Yeah.
And so I'm reading her and I find, wow, she has such a great way of sort of segueing into different sequences that you're reading and you go, oh my God, I'm like 10 years, this is 10 years later. And without that jarring sort of many years later, kind of thing.
Right.
And it's not like jarring. It was jarring to me because I realized that what she had done, but I was already engaged and I was already flowing, and I would have continued reading until I said,
Yeah.
wow. So I went back and and then I realized it's all about the details that she included, the sort of objective correlatives. I mean, all this stuff that kind
Mm.
of makes you say, okay, I'm beginning to sense something different here. And then you get it because you start putting it all together, but you want to keep reading, right? That kind of thing is, I think, what all of us need to look with writers. That's the best tip I can give, because then those are tips that you find yourself
Yeah.
with every
You're
master.
you're kind of creating your own curriculum.
Right.
My problem, and I don't know if you have an answer for this, but my problem is um, collating that information. I have this idea. So what I read a lot on Kindle, and I will highlight it so that you can go back and look at it later online, which
Right.
is great. It's all there, but I never do anything with it. I mean, I have this revelation and I think, oh my gosh, it's changed me as a person and as a writer. And then I know I forget 90%
Yeah.
of them. Do you have
Well,
a do you have a
uh,
collation method?
I think if it's a matter, if it's a tip, if I've seen something, and I'll give you another example from Cormac McCarthy does not use these quotation marks, when he does his
Hmm.
dialogue, and Juno Diaz does the same thing.
Right.
And I started noticing that, and then this collection, I said, I'm just gonna discard these quotation marks. So put into practice. As soon as you
Yeah,
can,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
put it into practice, and I find that it really, in that case, it really helps the overall flow, because how obtrusive are those quotation marks? Really, why are they there? When we all read, we know what dialogue is by now. It's almost like you watch a film. You know when it's a cut, and you know when the dissolve comes, it's going to. Why do we need to have these quotation marks? And so there's these conventions that are old, but I really believe that when you take them out, it forces you, instead of just putting this crutch, right? This is a, it forces you to really improve your dialogue and make it flow better.
Gosh, I think that's such a deep and insightful thing. It is a crutch now that I think about it, but but it's interesting. I can't think of any female writers who do this. I mean, Roddy Doyle does it. Interesting. Okay. I'm going to have to
try
cogitate
it.
on this.
Try it.
I will.
And I think that, take a passage that you're working on and do it and try to do it, because
if it doesn't work, then you're right. Your dialogue isn't strong enough. Period.
Yeah, because that's a good point, because the point is that the dialogue should just work without having to need, I mean, you should know when it's the and how do you keep that flow going? And I think it helps the overall flow of the piece, because dialogue is a stop, isn't it? We're going to stop and talk now for a while. And sometimes I like to embed the dialogue in a paragraph and to keep that flowing too, right? Maybe it's one piece of dialogue that's included. And I think that's work that you should try to do to make overall flow.
I love that. You find the mastery, and to make it your own, you practice it.
You got to practice it.
That's the missing piece that I have not been doing.
And I know you're working on something all the time, so just try it. And,
Why not?
Tried it with this collection. It forced me to go back and look at the dialogue.
That is so cool.
Yeah, so good.
All right. So what thing in your life affects your writing in a surprising way?
Oh, wow. That's a good, the key for me there is the word surprising, right? Because there's a lot of things that, have affected my life. But I think sometimes I read my pieces and I ask myself, why is this character so angry? And also the violence sometimes. I don't know if you had a chance to read some of the pieces, but
I did. Yeah. They're beautiful.
And I'm like, but myself, I'm like not a violent person. I am not by nature. And so I'm always asking myself, what is that? But then I'm thinking about my life and how I've watched a lot of violence. Not a lot, but I've watched more than I should have, I've had things like I've been playing basketball with my friends at a particular place, and some guy comes out with a machete and hits another guy, and my friends and I watching this, and I'm like,
oh my God.
Or the violence that people do to themselves, or society does to them. When I'm walking up the stairs in my tenement house building and I see a junkie lying on, that these are things that just still in my mind. I can't. So maybe that surprises me, that sometimes the violence is there, and it even bothers me, but it's coming out of me, right? So I know it's coming from somewhere, that maybe an angry place, because I'm also sometimes angry about stuff that's happening to us.
Does it rise up out of your writing as a surprise, or is it something that you plan to add?
No, I don't think you could really package that. It's you write a scene, and then always the biggest problem, right? How I'm going to end the story, right? Do I have to really go to the violent route? It should be organic, right? But if it's there and the opening's there, I don't know. Sometimes I do. Or the scenes don't have to be there. I try not to write gratuitous violence. I mean, that's
of course.
But still, there, it's like navigating this thing. There's a lot of violent things that happen to us. Okay, and the collection covers some of that. And there's no way that you can get around the fact that women were sterilized in a systematic way in Puerto Rico, right? Sort of a eugenics program, which the colonial government, Puerto Ricans themselves followed. So those kinds of things, the toil that my mother worked in a factory, and every time I see her coming home, I can see how it affected her body. So these are things that are violent to us. I mean, they're constantly affecting us, and it's another form of violence, because violence comes in many different ways. So I think that that's something that is there. It does surprise me, because I don't like violence myself.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things. When it's surprising, it's surprising.
Yeah. That's really interesting that it is, but it sounds also just imperative to come out in your work.
Yeah.
So speaking of your work, can you tell us about Migrations?
All right, so migrations, as I think your listeners should know by now, it's sort of a collection of short stories that deals with the impact that certain historical moments in our history, the impact it's had on just everyday people being the characters in my story. And I wanted to do something historical because I think a lot of people do not know enough about Puerto Ricans. They don't even know that I don't know how many times I've asked, like for my green card, dude, I don't,
Oh my God.
somebody actually asked me that. And at that time I had my green American Express. That's what I gave them. I said, this is
good for you.
This is the only green card I have at the moment. I don't know what to talk that, or I had a check from the University of Puerto Rico when I got back, and they asked me, do you want this in Puerto Rican dollars or American dollars? And when people ask me that, this is a teaching moment, Rachel, I'm thinking. So I said, give it to me in Puerto Rican dollars.
Why don't you do that? Can you find that conversion rate?
They went. She did. She went to find the conversion rate, and she came back. She was good about it, though. She said she had a big smile. Said, you got me. And I said, like, well, all we have is American dollars. So, that kind of thing. So it's a good way, I think, for readers to find out more about us. And some of the history of Puerto Rico is not happy, granted. So I can't be, we're happy people all the time. But I think it's a reality check for college, other Americans to find out that 8 million people, 8 million Americans, this is sort of the stuff that they've gone through. So it's thematic, it's linked. And I think the stories are very different. It's a variety of different stories. So hopefully they'll enjoy it.
And it is award-winning.
That's true.
That must have felt really great. Congratulations on that.
Oh, thank you so much. I think we always are looking for validation. Writers are, aren't they?
Yes,
we are. And when somebody actually says, "Hey, this is pretty good," it wins an award. I'm going, "Oh, wow!"
Thank you very much.
Thank you. That makes me feel very happy, and that I'm not wasting my time, putting so much effort into my writing. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being on the show. I wish you the best in retirement from academia and your pivot into full-time writing. That's going to be super fun. Keep me posted on how that goes.
I will. I'm going to have to follow you.
Please. Yeah. When I the only reason I say it is because when I went full-time writing, I didn't write that much more. I found that I was already doing as much as I could.
Right.
So
the teaching helps. I think the teaching helps.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Oh, and where can we find you online?
Okay, so my handle at Facebook is @RicanWriter, and that's together. And then my website is jltorres.com. So either way, they can find it there.
Thank you so much for being here, JL. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.